The storm had already swallowed the mountain road when he noticed her standing there, hood pulled low, snow clinging to her like the mountain itself was trying to hide her from the world. He almost kept walking. In these mountains, you learn quickly not to stop for things you couldn't afford to save. But something about that still figure, unmoving against the wind, struck a place in his chest he thought had frozen years ago. He reached into his pocket, felt the single dollar he carried for emergencies, and made a choice that would quietly rewrite the rest of his life. If you believe in silent heroes and second chances, take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. His name was Elijah Brooks, a poor mountain man living deep in the Rockies of the United States, raised in a small Christian town where faith mattered more than fortune. Elijah owned nothing of value except a weather-beaten cabin, a pair of strong hands, and a reputation for honesty. Life had never been gentle with him. His parents had died young. The logging work that once supported the town had vanished, and the woman he planned to marry left when she realized poverty wasn't a temporary season for him. Since then, Elijah lived quietly, cutting firewood, repairing trails, and trading labor for food when winter grew long. That evening, the storm was worse than most. Visibility was almost gone, and the temperature dropped fast. Elijah knew no one survived long out there without shelter. He approached the hooded woman cautiously, offering her the only thing he could afford, $1 in exchange for helping him carry supplies back to his cabin. A simple excuse to justify what his heart had already decided. She nodded without lifting her head, took the dollar gently, and followed him through the snow. Inside the cabin, warmth returned slowly. The fire crackled, shadows danced on the wooden walls, and silence filled the space between them. Elijah avoided staring, unsure who she was or what pain hid beneath that hood. He poured hot water, offered food, and gave her space. It was only when she finally spoke, her voice soft but steady, that something inside him shifted. There was strength there, not loud strength, not prideful strength, but the kind shaped by loss, faith, and survival. Her name was Grace Holloway. She had once lived a full life far from the mountains, with a family, a future, and a place in the world. One by one, those things had been taken from her. A house fire, a betrayal she never saw coming, and a season of wandering that stripped her down to almost nothing. She wore the hood not to hide her face, but to shield herself from pity. Speaking to Elijah, she didn't beg, didn't explain too much, and didn't ask for more than shelter for the night. Elijah listened in silence, his chest tightening with every word. He recognized her pain because it mirrored his own. Two lives shaped by different paths, yet carved by the same loneliness. That night, as the storm raged outside, Elijah prayed silently, asking God why some people were broken so deeply, and why. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in it. Grace stayed longer than one night, not because Elijah asked, and not because she planned it. The mountain decided for them. Roads closed, storms returned, and time stretched. Grace helped around the cabin, her presence gentle but purposeful. She repaired clothing, cleaned without being asked, and hummed hymns Elijah hadn't heard since childhood. Slowly, the cabin changed. It felt less like a shelter and more like a home. Elijah struggled with fear. He had learned the hard way that good things rarely stayed. He kept emotional distance, convincing himself she would leave once the path cleared. Grace seemed to understand, without words. She never promised to stay. She never pressured him for answers. She simply lived alongside him, matching his pace, respecting his wounds. The mountain tested them again when Elijah was injured during a logging job. Snow collapsed beneath him, twisting his leg badly. Days passed where he couldn't work, and panic set in. Without income, winter could become deadly. Grace stepped in without hesitation. She traded her skills in nearby towns, baked bread for neighbors, and prayed over Elijah every night. Watching her carry burdens he believed were his alone broke something open in him. Faith returned quietly. Elijah found himself praying aloud again, not out of desperation, but gratitude. He noticed how Grace knelt by the window each morning, whispering prayers into the cold air. He noticed how she thanked God even when meals were small. Her belief wasn't loud, but it was unshakable. It reminded him of the faith his mother once carried, the kind that survived storms without demanding answers. Spring arrived late that year. But when it did, the mountain bloomed with rare beauty. Grace suggested planting a small garden. Elijah doubted the soil, the weather, and himself, but she believed. Together they worked the ground, hands aching, spirits lifting. When the first green shoots appeared, Elijah felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The turning point came one evening, as they sat quietly, watching the sun dip behind the peaks. Grace spoke of her past with clarity and peace, no longer weighed down by shame. Elijah realized that her voice, the one he first heard by the fire, had become the sound he waited for each day. He understood then that love hadn't arrived like a storm. It had grown slowly, rooted in shared faith, shared pain, and shared silence. Elijah wrestled with doubt. What could a poor mountain man offer a woman who deserved so much more? But Grace never asked for more. She chose presence over comfort, purpose over ease. Her choice challenged everything Elijah believed about his worth. The community noticed. The man who once avoided gatherings now stood taller. The cabin, once known for isolation, became a place of warmth. Travelers found rest there. Neighbors brought supplies, not out of pity, but respect. Elijah worked harder, not driven by fear, but love. Before this story reaches its end, take a moment to comment below and share whether you believe that sometimes the smallest choices lead to the greatest blessings. Elijah eventually offered grace more than shelter. He offered commitment, faith, and a life built not on wealth, but trust. She accepted not because he had changed, but because he had always been enough. The dollar he paid that night became a symbol of something greater, not a transaction, but an act of quiet courage. Years later, standing beside the same mountain road where they first met, Elijah understood the truth. He hadn't paid $1 for help. He had paid attention when the world told him not to, and in doing so, he found the one person who saw him not as a poor mountain man, but as a man worth loving.